When the news of war spread across Westeros, every great house was searching for allies. Robb Stark, young and untested, had just won his first battles against the Lannisters. The North had called him King in the North, but Robb knew titles were not enough to win the war. He needed powerful friends, and above all, he needed the strength of food, ships, and money to stand against the crown in King's Landing. Far to the south, the Tyrells were quietly preparing their own path. Lord Mace Tyrell of Highgarden had riches, soldiers, and a daughter whose beauty was spoken of from Dawn to the Vale, Margaery Tyrell. Normally, the Tyrells had tied themselves to Renly Baratheon, believing his charm and claim could bring them to the Iron Throne. But what if Renly never captured their hearts? What if clever Lady Olenna whispered that a match with the wolf in the north was far more promising? Margaery Tyrell became betrothed not to Renly, but to Robb Stark. The decision shook the realm. A union between the North and the Reach meant bread for the winter, roses with the wolves, and a sword pointed directly at Lannister power. Cersei would lose her sleep, Tywin would grind his teeth, and even the Iron Throne would tremble at such a bond. When Margaery arrived at Riverrun, Robb was not ready for her. He had imagined a southern lady too soft for war, too spoiled to understand what it meant to sleep in tents and hear the cries of dying men. But when he first saw her, graceful yet steady, bowing her head to his bannermen as if she were already their queen, something stirred inside him. She was not only beautiful but sharp. Her smile carried calculation. Her words, soft as silk, bound men as tightly as iron chains. Lady Catelyn Stark watched the pair carefully. She knew Robb's heart was still wounded from leaving home, from parting with his sisters and brothers. But she also knew the Game of Thrones was cruel. "Do not let love blind you," she whispered one night to her son. "But if this girl helps you win, then hold her close." The Tyrell army marched to join the wolves. Their golden banners with roses fluttered beside the grey direwolf of House Stark. In the campfires, men spoke in wonder. Some said the gods themselves had forged this marriage. Bread and salt from the Reach, steel and snow from the north. Together they could crush the Lion of Casterly Rock. But whispers spread too. Whispers that Margaery's beauty was more dangerous than a blade, that she would twist Robb to her will. Some northern lords, proud and stubborn, muttered against the match. "The Starks wed their daughters to the south, but never their kings," said Lord Karstark with bitterness. "Will we now bow to roses instead of remembering the old gods?" Robb heard these whispers, but when he looked at Margaery, he pushed them aside. For the first time in months, he felt hope, not only for the war, but for his life beyond it. She smiled at him as though he were more than just a king, more than just a boy with too heavy a crown. That night, in the hall of Riverrun, the bannermen drank to the new marriage alliance. They raised their cups to King Robb Stark and Queen Margaery Tyrell. Yet behind the music and cheers, shadows lengthened. Tywin Lannister had not yet made his move. The game had only just begun. The wedding between Robb Stark and Margaery Tyrell was not a grand southern feast in Highgarden, but a practical, swift union inside the walls of Riverrun. There were no golden chandeliers or fountains of wine, but the hall was filled with men loyal to both houses, raising their voices in song and cheer. Robb looked stiff in his dark furs, but Margaery wore her smile like armor, charming every bannerman who came forward to greet her. Lady Olenna sat close to Catelyn Stark during the ceremony, sharp eyes watching everything. At one point she leaned over and whispered, "Your boy is handsome but too honest. Margaery will teach him how to play this game properly." Catelyn gave her a cold smile, not sure whether to take the words as promise or warning. News of the marriage spread like wildfire across Westeros. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei smashed a cup against the wall when she heard it. "The Reach and the North, united," she spat. "Do they mean to starve us into submission?" Tywin Lannister, however, was quieter. He sat at his table with maps and letters, his golden eyes narrowing. "This is dangerous," he admitted to his council. "The Tyrells have betrayed the Baratheons, and the wolves now have food enough for 10 winters." If they hold together, they could unseat the throne. In Storm's End, Renly Baratheon was left fuming. The Tyrells had been his greatest strength, and without them his claim weakened to almost nothing. Sir Loras, heartbroken and enraged, demanded answers from his family. "You would throw away Renly like a dog, after all he has done for us?" But Lady Olenna silenced him with a cutting remark. "Renly has charm, but no crown. Robb has half a kingdom behind him. Learn to think with your head, not your heart." Meanwhile, Robb's war council grew more confident. The Tyrells brought with them not only soldiers, but wagons of grain, barrels of wine, and chests of gold. Northern lords who had feared their supplies running dry now felt a surge of relief. "With the Reach at our side, even the winter can be endured," said Lord Greatjanumber, slapping the table with a laugh. Yet not all were pleased. Rickard Karstark still grumbled. "We fight for the north, not for southern games. Wolves should not lie with roses." His words carried weight among some of the older bannermen, but they did not dare openly defy their king. Margaery played her part well. She listened to Robb's men as if their concerns were her own, praised the northern customs, and even learned to pray at the heart tree in Riverrun's Godswood, though the southern gods were all she had known before. The common soldiers adored her, for she often walked among them, offering smiles, kind words, and sometimes even food from her own stores. Whispers spread that she was the queen who would unite the cold north and the fertile south, but behind her soft laughter there was calculation. At night, she and her grandmother would speak quietly. "The boy is strong but green," Olenna would say. "Guide him gently. Never let him feel you are leading. Let him believe he is the wolf, even as you plant roses along his path." Margaery nodded, her eyes calm. "He will not even notice when the roots of Highgarden tighten around him." As the Stark-Tyrell alliance grew, Stannis Baratheon began to march with grim determination. Without the Tyrells, Renly's forces scattered, some bending the knee to Stannis, others retreating back to their homes. Stannis, though joyless, now looked more threatening. He still claimed the throne by right, but the Lannisters now feared the wolves far more. In King's Landing, the small folk began whispering about the young wolf and the rose. Songs spread of how their marriage would bring peace, bread, and justice. For the starving poor, who saw only Lannister cruelty and taxes, hope rose in their hearts. Cersei hated these songs most of all, ordering singers' tongues torn out. But the more she tried to silence them, the louder they grew in secret corners. Robb, however, remained torn. He still dreamed of his father's justice, of freeing his sisters from the Red Keep, of punishing the Lannisters for their treachery. But when Margaery sat beside him and spoke of ruling not just as king of the North, but as king of a united realm, he hesitated. Could he go further than his father ever dared? Could he take the Iron Throne itself? One night, as winter winds rattled the windows of Riverrun, Margaery leaned close and whispered to him, "You could be more than king in the north, my lord. You could be king of all Westeros. With the Reach at your side, no lion, stag, or dragon could stop you." Robb looked into her eyes, caught between duty to his people and the fire of her words. For the first time, he wondered if his war was not only about vengeance, but about destiny. And far away, Tywin Lannister sharpened his quill, writing letters to new allies. "Divide them," he murmured to himself. "Divide them, or all is lost." Tywin Lannister was a man who never panicked. Even when the walls of King's Landing trembled with whispers of Robb Stark and Margaery Tyrell, he sat silent, moving his pieces on the board. "Power is not just swords and banners," he told his council. "It is fear. It is loyalty bought with promises, and enemies undone before their blades ever cross ours." His plan was simple in words, but deadly in reach. Break the alliance before it grew too strong. The Tyrells were ambitious, yes, but also proud and greedy. Tywin believed pride and greed could be turned into cracks wide enough to shatter any union. He sent ravens not only to lords of the Reach, but also to those bannermen of the North who grumbled under Robb's rule. Letters sealed in gold promised titles, lands, and safety for those who would remember their true king on the Iron Throne. In Riverrun, life seemed brighter at first. Soldiers were fed, banners were high, and the young queen walked among the men, giving them faith that this war had meaning. But Catelyn Stark noticed something troubling. In war councils, Robb listened more and more to Margaery. She spoke gently, never pushing too hard, yet her ideas shaped the talk of kingship far beyond the north. Catelyn feared her son was being guided down a path he did not fully understand. "Robb," she said one evening, "remember what you fight for. Your father's honor, your sister's freedom, the North's independence. Do not let southern dreams cloud your purpose." But Robb, staring at the map before him, answered quietly, "Mother, what if independence is not enough? What if we could end this war, not by breaking away, but by taking the throne itself? No more lions ruling, no more stags fighting. A wolf and a rose could bring peace." Catelyn's heart sank. She remembered Ned, his quiet honor, his refusal to play games. Now her son was listening to games played by roses and thorns. Meanwhile, the northern bannermen grew restless. Some, like the Umbers and the Mormonts, cheered for every new Tyrell cart of bread and wine. But others grumbled loudly. Lord Karstark spat during a feast. "We bled for the Starks, not for these perfumed southerners. Do you think the old gods smile on this marriage? The boy king forgets his father's ways." Word of such complaints travelled quickly. Lady Olenna heard them, of course. To her, a few grumbling wolves were no concern, as long as the larger pack followed. But Tywin's spies made sure the anger reached King's Landing too, where it could be fanned into rebellion at the right moment. Then came troubling news. Stannis Baratheon had taken Storm's End after Renly's sudden death. His army marched south with fire and faith, claiming the Lord of Light himself blessed his path. To many he looked unstoppable, but without the Tyrells, his strength was half of what it could have been. Robb's advisors argued about what to do. Some urged him to march on King's Landing now, while the city starved and its lords trembled. Others, cautious, warned that fighting both the Lannisters and Stannis would doom them all. Robb listened, but his heart leaned toward boldness. And Margaery, with her quiet whispers at night, told him the people of the capital already loved the songs of the Wolf and the Rose. "Strike now," she urged, "and they will open the gates for you." But before Robb could act, Tywin made his move. A letter arrived from Lord Walder Frey, sealed with an oily smile. He complained bitterly of being insulted, ignored, cast aside, for was not Robb already promised to a Frey daughter? And yet he had broken faith for a Tyrell. "You treat my house as dung on your boots," the letter snarled. "Do not expect me to bend my knee for insult." Robb paled as he read it. Catelyn's face tightened. Everyone in the hall remembered the deal Robb had once struck at the twins, and everyone knew the Freys were petty enough to hold grudges for generations. Margaery, however, only smiled. "My lord husband," she said sweetly, "the Freys are a minor house. They bluster like children. Let them sulk. With Highgarden at your side, who needs muddy river lords?" Her words pleased many, but not Catelyn. She knew the Freys could not be dismissed so easily. A slighted ally was often more dangerous than an open enemy. As tensions thickened, Tywin pressed his advantage. His gold found its way to the Freys, to certain Reach bannermen jealous of Margaery's new crown, and even to a few northern lords tired of bleeding in southern wars. Quietly, secretly, the lion sowed seeds of doubt in the wolf's growing garden. And so, while Robb dreamed of thrones and Margaery whispered of destiny, the cracks began to show. Cracks wide enough for an enemy like Tywin Lannister to tear apart. The first true test of the Wolf and Rose alliance came not from the battlefield, but from within their own camp. Rumours spread faster than ravens, carried by whispers among the soldiers. The Freys had withdrawn their support. Some said Lord Walder was gathering his strength to side with Tywin, others that he planned to shut the gates of the twins against any northern host that tried to cross. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. The army Robb had built on trust and oaths was starting to feel unsteady. Robb called a council in Riverrun's great hall. His bannermen crowded the chamber, their voices hot and angry. Lord Karstark slammed his fist on the table. The Freys were insulted, and rightly so. You swore an oath, Robb. The North remembers, and so do they. Now we are mocked across the riverlands as oath-breakers. Great John Umber barked back, "What good are oaths if they chain us to petty lords with frog-faced daughters? The Tyrells bring us 10 Freys worth of swords, gold and bread." The hall erupted into shouting. Some northern lords nodded toward Karstark, others sided with Umber. The Tyrell knights stood proudly, unmoved by the noise, their hands on their sword hilts, as though daring the northerners to speak against their new queen. Robb rose to his feet, his face dark with anger. "Enough!" His voice cut through the noise. "I am your king. The Freys may grumble, but they will not decide this war. We march when I command, not when Lord Walder whines for attention." The lords bowed their heads, but not all were convinced. Catelyn watched the council with cold dread. She had lived long enough to know that pride and insults often killed more men than swords. That night she confronted Robb alone. "You should not have dismissed the Freys so lightly. A broken oath can poison an entire kingdom. Your father once told me, 'Trust is a sword sharper than steel. Break it, and even your own men will doubt you.'" Robb looked tired. "What would you have me do, mother? Cast Margaery aside like a piece of armor I've outgrown? Break one marriage to mend another?" He shook his head. "No, this is my path now." Margaery entered then, silent as a shadow, and took Robb's hand. "The Freys are not worth your worry, my love. Their castles are bridges over muddy rivers. Highgarden feeds half the realm. Together we will make the North and the South bow as one." She looked at Catelyn with calm, unblinking eyes. "Your son's destiny is greater than scraps of oaths to petty lords." Catelyn held her tongue, but inside her heart ached. She feared the young queen's words had already wrapped themselves around Robb like vines around stone. While the wolves and roses quarrelled, Tywin Lannister sharpened his trap. Ravens flew from Casterly Rock, bearing promises of wealth to House Frey. Others went to the Ironborn, whose restless ships prowled the seas. "Even to Dawn," he wrote, hinting that the Wolf-Rose Union might soon choke them all. Tywin did not need loyalty. He needed chaos, enough to keep Robb's dream of unity from ever taking root. In King's Landing, Joffrey laughed cruelly when told of the Alliance's troubles. "Let the pup and his flower choke on each other's pride," he sneered, tossing scraps of meat to his hounds. But Cersei was less amused. She knew her father's quill was deadlier than her son's sword. The turning point came on the march south. Robb's host moved slowly, burdened by supply wagons and the endless arguments of his bannermen. In one village, a small riot broke out between northern soldiers and reachmen over stolen bread. Steel was drawn and blood spilled before the fight was broken. Though only a handful died, the wound ran deep. "The wolves and roses will kill each other before they reach the lions," jested one Lannister scout, who escaped to tell the tale. Robb punished the guilty and made speeches of unity. But doubt was spreading like a sickness. Some northerners muttered that their king was forgetting his father's gods, losing himself in southern games. Some Tyrell knights mocked the northerners as savages who still prayed to trees. Through it all, Margaery smiled in public, calm as ever, whispering hope into Robb's ear each night. "Ignore their squabbles. The people love us." The songs spread faster than Tywin's letters. "The capital will fall to you if you only believe it." But far away, in the Twins, Lord Walder Frey was reading a letter sealed with a lion's golden wax. His wrinkled lips curled into something between a sneer and a grin. The letter promised him more than Robb ever had: safety, marriage ties, and the respect he craved. For the first time in his long, bitter life, he felt like the realm might finally kneel to the Freys, and as the old man chuckled to himself, a storm gathered. The wolf and the rose had bloomed together, but shadows of betrayal crept closer with each passing day. The march south slowed like a wounded beast. Every mile carried more strain, more whispers, more cracks between the wolves and the roses. Robb kept his head high, but even he could feel the unease. The war was no longer just swords and banners. It was words, oaths, and betrayals, hiding in the dark. The first blow came not from Tywin's armies, but from the sea. The Ironborn struck hard along the northern coast. Pike's raiders swept into Deepwood Motte, burned villages, and even threatened Winterfell itself. Ravens brought word that Theon Greyjoy, once Robb's sworn brother, had turned cloak and raised his father's Kraken banner. The news cut Robb deeper than any blade. Around the war table his lords shouted, "We cannot march on King's Landing while our home burns," cried Lord Mormont. "What good is a crown if the north itself is lost?" Robb clenched his jaw. "We cannot turn back. If we retreat now, Tywin will take it as weakness. He will crush us before we find our feet again." But Catelyn's eyes burned with grief. "Your brothers and sisters, your people are in danger. The north bleeds while you chase a southern dream." Margaery placed a hand on Robb's shoulder. "The Ironborn are gnats compared to lions. If you seize the throne, all the realm's power will be yours. You can sweep them aside like dust. Do not let raiders distract you from destiny." Her words soothed Robb for a moment, but in the silence afterward, many northern lords looked away, their loyalty fraying. Then came the second blow. Word from the twins. Lord Walder Frey had shut his gates and refused passage to Robb's men. His letter, oily and mocking, arrived soon after. A king who breaks oaths cannot expect bridges to open for him. Perhaps the lions treat their friends with more honor. The hall erupted in fury when the letter was read. Great Jon Umber roared to burn the twins, while Karstark muttered that it was Robb's fault for dishonoring the Freys in the first place. Robb slammed his hand on the table. "If Walder Frey chooses to side with lions, he will suffer a wolf's teeth." But the words were hollow, for everyone knew Tywin's gold was already filling Frey coffers. The crossing was lost, and with it one of the few safe paths back north. The third blow struck like a hammer. Tywin's army, instead of chasing Robb directly, turned its fury on the Riverlands. Villages were torched, fields burned, and innocent folk slaughtered. Each raven carried news of another devastation. "He's bleeding us without ever drawing battle," said Lord Blackwood grimly. "He knows the wolf and the rose cannot protect every field." Robb's host grew restless, torn between vengeance and strategy. The Tyrell soldiers urged, pressing on toward King's Landing. The northern lords begged to defend their homes. Every council ended in shouting, and more than once, men left the tent with blood in their eyes. Through it all, Margaery's influence grew stronger. She spoke not as a soldier, but as a queen. "The people of King's Landing starve. They whisper your name with hope. Strike there and you win more than a battle. You win their hearts. When the city falls, even the north will forgive you." Her words carried weight, and Robb listened. But Catelyn could see the danger. "She is leading him to the throne," she confided in Brynden Tully, the Blackfish. "But every step south pulls him further from the north. I fear the wolves will lose themselves in the roses." Meanwhile, Tywin's letters bore fruit. In Dorne, promises of vengeance for Elia Martell sowed doubt. Among the Freys, greed bloomed into open plotting. Even in the Reach, lords jealous of House Tyrell's sudden rise began whispering of betrayal. Tywin had no need to march. His quill was sharper than Robb's sword. The breaking point came after a skirmish near Harrenhal. Robb's men won the field, but at great cost. Lord Rickard Karstark lost 2 sons, and in his grief he raged against Robb. "You waste our blood on southern games. My boys died for your Flower Queen, not for the north." His words were poison in the camp, echoing through the tents. Robb tried to mend the wound, but Karstark's fury only deepened. Men began to murmur of vengeance, of broken trust, of a king too young to see the truth. That night, while Robb and Margaery dined on bread and wine, a rider galloped into camp, his horse frothing with exhaustion. He bore a sealed message, written in a hand every man in the realm feared. Tywin's words were few but sharp. The lion does not need to fight the wolf and the rose. He only needs to let them tear each other apart. Robb read the letter in silence, his knuckles white. He looked at Margaery, then at his mother, then at the map before him. For the first time, doubt filled his eyes. The cracks in his alliance were no longer whispers. They were widening into open wounds, and Tywin was waiting, patient as death itself, for the moment to strike. The camp at River Run no longer felt like a king's army. It felt like a collection of wolves and roses pacing in the same cage, waiting to snap at each other. The banners still flew together, but trust had begun to rot. Lord Rickard Carstark's anger burned hottest. The death of his sons had broken something in him, and his tongue no longer cared for loyalty. Around the campfires, his men muttered openly that Robb had lost his way. "He thinks with his heart, not his head," Carstark growled one night, his voice carrying across the tents. "He betrayed us for a southern queen, and now my sons are bones in the dirt." Robb summoned him the next day, demanding he hold his tongue. Carstark's reply cut like a blade. "You are not your father." Eddard Stark was a man of honor. "You are a boy chasing crowns, forgetting your own blood while my sons rot." The insult could not be ignored. Robb ordered Carstark confined, but the damage was done. Many northern soldiers began to whisper that their king was no longer their king at all. Margaery saw the cracks and worked to mend them, walking among the camps with her soft voice and gentle smiles. "Your king grieves as you do," she told Carstark's men, "but you must not abandon him. The North needs your strength. He needs your loyalty." Some were soothed, but others only spat, calling her Southern Witch behind her back. Catelyn watched with sorrow. She saw Margaery's charm, but she also saw how her presence deepened the divide. The North wanted no Queen of Roses. They wanted their wolf whole and unyielding. Yet Robb, blinded by love and ambition, could not see it. Then came word of treachery. Scouts reported that Lord Walder Frey had welcomed Lannister riders into his halls. The gates of the twins stood open to lions, but closed to wolves. Robb's fury shook him. "The Freys have betrayed us. We will march on the twins, tear their bridges stone by stone, and make an end to Lord Walder's house." His voice carried fire, but his counsel hesitated. Brynden Tully the Blackfish spoke first. "Marching on the twins leaves your back exposed. Tywin will strike the moment you turn north." Greatjon Umber slammed his fist. "Let him strike. Better to fight lions in the field than bow to traitors hiding behind bridges." Margaery's voice was softer, yet sharper. "My lord husband, do not waste your crown on Freys. Their betrayal is poison, but you must not drink it. Strike for King's Landing. Show the realm your power. When you wear the Iron Throne, the Freys will crawl back begging forgiveness." Robb hesitated, torn between vengeance and ambition. In the end, he chose neither. He ordered the army to hold, waiting for clearer news. But hesitation is its own kind of weakness. Every day they lingered, men deserted, some slipping north to defend their burning homes, others lured by Frey gold or Lannister promises. Tywin's quill worked faster than any sword. Letters arrived in camp from northern lords who had once sworn loyalty, now begging forgiveness from the Iron Throne. Others spoke of alliances forming in secret, of bannermen willing to turn their cloaks if promised land and safety. One night, a hooded messenger crept into Riverrun itself, bearing a letter for Catelyn. She broke the seal with trembling hands. It was from her brother Edmure, begging her to convince Robb to abandon the Southern War. "The Riverlands are ashes," he wrote. "The North burns. The people are starving. If Robb keeps chasing this dream, he will lose everything." Catelyn showed the letter to her son, hoping it would move him. But Robb only looked away. "I cannot turn back now. To retreat is to lose everything we have fought for." His voice was heavy, but his eyes were fixed on Margaery, as though searching for her approval, and Margaery, with her gentle smile, whispered, "The people already call you their king. To retreat would make them liars. Press forward, and you will be the truth they long for." But even as she spoke, the cracks deepened. Carstark's men refused orders. Small skirmishes broke out between Northerners and Reach soldiers. One bloody night, a fight over dice left 3 men dead, 2 wolves and 1 rose. Tywin's spies reported everything. From his chamber, he read the notes and allowed himself a rare smile. "They crumble without me raising a blade," he murmured. "But still, a clean cut is always better than waiting for rot to finish the job." And so he began to plan. Not another skirmish, not another battle. Something larger, something final, a feast perhaps, or a marriage. A trap woven from bread and salt, where wolves and roses alike would wither under a lion's paw. The letters flew once more, this time to Walder Frey, to Rose Bolton, to every man whose ambition outweighed his honor. Promises of lands, titles, safety, and a chance to rid the realm of the Wolf-Rose dream before it grew too dangerous. As Robb dreamed of thrones, and Margaery whispered of destiny, Tywin sharpened his greatest weapon yet, betrayal, dressed in the robes of hospitality. The nights grew colder as the army camped near River Run. Smoke curled from the cook fires, carrying with it the scent of tension more than food. Even the songs of the bards could not lift spirits anymore. The soldiers knew something was wrong. They had won battles, yes, but the war felt like sand slipping through their fingers. Robb tried to keep his men together. He rode among the camps, speaking with the soldiers, asking about their homes, promising them victory. Some still cheered for him, but others gave hollow nods, their loyalty strained. They missed the north, their families, their gods. To them, every mile south was a mile further from home. Margaery remained at his side, as radiant as ever. She played her role perfectly, praising the northern warriors for their strength, offering food to the wounded, smiling as though she were already queen of the realm. To many, she was a vision of hope. But to others, especially the older northern lords, she was a reminder of everything they mistrusted about the south. Catelyn Stark felt it keenly. She sat often in silence, watching her son and his queen. Margaery's beauty, her grace, her careful words, everything about her was polished, practiced. She binds him with silk, Catelyn thought bitterly, but silk can strangle as tightly as chains. Then word came that Rose Bolton had returned from a campaign with grim news. His forces had suffered heavy losses against Lannister patrols. His voice was cold, calm, as he addressed the council. "My men are tired. Their numbers dwindle. And yet we bleed for a war that may never end. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our path." Robb stared at him, anger flashing in his eyes. "Do you suggest we kneel? Do you suggest we abandon the north to lions?" Bolton's pale eyes gave nothing away. "I suggest that victory is not always taken by strength. Sometimes survival is the wiser prize." The words unsettled the room. Brynden Tully leaned close to Robb afterward. "Do not trust him. The Boltons have always been a house of flayers. They serve only themselves." But Robb, weary and desperate for unity, brushed the warning aside. Behind the scenes, letters were moving. Bolton's quiet words were already tied by Raven's wings to Casterly Rock. Tywin's promises had found him, just as they had found the phrase. Lands, titles, Warden of the North, temptations too great for a man like Roose to ignore. Meanwhile, Lord Walder Frey struck a different bargain. He offered peace, forgiveness and reconciliation. All Robb needed to do was attend a wedding. Edmure Tully, Catelyn's brother, would wed one of Walder's daughters. Bread and salt would be shared, alliances reforged, and the broken oaths forgotten. The offer brought relief to many. Great Janumba roared with laughter when he heard it. "The old weasel wants to make nice again. A feast and a wedding, what better way to seal friendship?" But Catelyn's heart trembled. She knew Walder Frey too well. The man never forgave, never forgot. His pride was his soul, and Robb had wounded it deeply. "Do not trust him," she urged her son. "Even under guest right, the Freys are snakes. I would sooner marry your uncle to a corpse than send him to that hall." Robb tried to reassure her. "Mother, we cannot fight every lord in the realm. We need the Freys, or at least their bridges. If this wedding restores peace, then it must be done." Margaery, too, pressed for acceptance. "My love, this is a gift. The realm will see mercy in your heart, strength in your forgiveness. Take this chance, and you prove yourself more than a warrior. You prove yourself a king." Robb agreed. The banners were raised once more, but not for battle. The host would march to the twins for Edmure's wedding. Some cheered the news, hoping for respite from endless war. Others, quieter, felt unease. Whispers of betrayal still lingered. Far away, Tywin received word of Robb's decision and allowed himself a thin smile. The wolf walks into the trap willingly. Let the Freys dress their hall with bread and salt. Let the Boltons stand ready. Soon there will be no wolf and no rose, only ashes. The preparations began in secret. At the twins, Walder Frey ordered barrels of wine brought forth, food prepared, and musicians summoned. Yet behind the walls, soldiers sharpened blades and whispered of blood yet to be spilled. And at Harrenhal, Roose Bolton spoke quietly with his captains. "The wolf trusts us, but when the lion roars, we shall be the ones to skin him." The banners of Wolf and Rose still fluttered proudly, but doom had already been sewn into their fabric. The march to the twins had begun. The march to the twins was uneasy. Though songs were sung along the road, and wagons carried barrels of wine for the wedding, the soldiers did not sing as loudly as before. They had heard the tales of Lord Walder Frey's grudges. They had seen the letters promising peace written in his crooked hand. Yet something in the air felt wrong, heavy as storm clouds. When they arrived, the twins loomed like two squat giants straddling the river. The gates opened slowly, creaking as if reluctant to welcome their guests. Inside, Lord Walder Frey greeted them with his usual sour grin, his voice dripping with mock courtesy. "King Robb, Queen Margaery, Lady Catelyn, an honour at last. And my dear Edmure, come meet your bride. She's prettier than you deserve." Laughter followed, but it was sharp, mocking. Edmure blushed, yet relief showed on his face when he saw that the bride was indeed fairer than he expected. The feast began with bread and salt, offered to all, a promise of guest right. Catelyn accepted it with trembling hands, though unease still gnawed at her heart. The hall filled with music, with the laughter of men who had bled for years and longed for respite. Food was heaped high. Roast fowl, venison, fresh bread, pies stuffed with apples from the reach. Wine flowed like rivers, and for a time the bitterness seemed forgotten. Robb even smiled as Margaery danced, her gown of green and gold flashing like sunlight in the torchlight, but Catelyn could not shake her dread. She noticed Frey men watching too closely, their hands never far from their belts. She saw Roose Bolton's pale eyes glinting coldly in the shadows, his smile thin as a knife. She whispered to Robb, "Something is wrong. We should leave." Robb tried to soothe her. "Mother, you worry too much. The Freys would not dare break guest right." He said it as if he believed it, but his hand lingered on the hilt of his sword. The night stretched on. At last, Edmure and his bride were led away, laughter chasing them as the bedding ceremony began. The hall grew quieter then, though the musicians still played their strings. A new song began, soft at first, haunting. Catelyn froze. It was the Rains of Castamere. Her blood turned to ice. She looked across the hall and saw the doors barred. She saw the Frey men stand, their faces hard. She saw Roose Bolton glance at her, then at Robb, before pulling on a glove of pale leather. "Robb," she whispered urgently, "it's a trap." The first arrow flew before her warning reached him. It struck one of Robb's guards in the throat, then another and another. The music swelled, drowning the screams as the slaughter began. Frey men pulled hidden blades and fell upon the unsuspecting guests. Wine spilled, mingling with blood on the floor. Robb staggered to his feet, trying to draw his sword, but a quarrel struck his side. Margaery cried out, clutching his arm, but a Frey soldier seized her by the hair and dragged her back. She fought, her beauty twisted in terror, but her screams were swallowed by the chaos. Catelyn grabbed a dagger from a fallen man and slashed wildly, desperate to reach her son. She cut one Frey down, then another, but the hall was filled with too many. Blood splashed her gown, her breath came in gasps, and still she pushed forward. Robb, wounded yet unyielding, staggered toward Margaery. "Let her go!" he roared, his voice raw. But before he could reach her, Roose Bolton stepped from the shadows. "The Lannisters send their regards," he said calmly, and plunged his blade into Robb's heart. Robb's eyes widened, his lips parted as if to speak. And then he fell. Margaery's scream tore through the hall as she was struck down moments later, her green gown soaking red. The wolf and the rose lay together on the floor, crushed beneath betrayal. Catelyn, choking on grief, seized Lord Walder's young wife by the hair and pressed her dagger to the girl's throat. "You have broken guest right," she shrieked. "May the gods damn you, Frey." But her voice was drowned by laughter. Lord Walder only smirked, his yellow teeth flashing. "The gods are far away, my lady. And here I am the law." Steel flashed, and Catelyn's world went black. The Red Wedding, though in this world it was bloodier still, ended the dream of the wolf and the rose. The North was broken, the Reach scattered, and Tywin Lannister's smile stretched cold across the realm. Songs of hope died in the hall that night. Only ashes remained, and the Game of Thrones moved on as it always did, uncaring of the dead left behind.